I've put together this list of 20 important reasons for moving from AutoCAD to AutoCAD Architecture. And the biggest emphasis I want to make is that if you're in the building industry, an architect, interiors, or something to do with buildings, and you are going to stay in the AutoCAD world for at least the next few years, then you might want to seriously consider upgrading from AutoCAD to AutoCAD Architecture. I'll go through these things a little more slowly. There's a lot of stuff on here, but these are kind of 20 things that I've put together, and we will kind of take a look at each of them one at a time. So the first one is Ben Franklin, one of our Philly boys, and $100 is what I'm told the difference is per year for you to go from AutoCAD to AutoCAD Architecture. So I did a little math, and I took $100, divided it by 260 annual work days, and folks, that's 38 cents a day more, or if you do it per hour, it's around a nickel an hour. So yeah, seriously, you can afford this, right? Okay, so it's not a lot of money. It's Valentine's Day. Oh, some of you forgot, didn't you, right? You got to get flowers or a card or some chocolate, or you are so in trouble tonight. Okay, so AutoCAD loves AutoCAD Architecture. They work very well together. Let me see if I can sneak into AutoCAD here. And I've got an AutoCAD Architecture building, meaning that I have what are called smart walls, an AEC space. I've got this over here. I've got an AEC wall. Over here, I've got an AEC door, right? So these are architectural objects, and yet I'm really just in plain old AutoCAD, right? You can see up here at the top of the screen, it's just plain AutoCAD. Now, while I can't change these objects from one type to another, and trying to manipulate them is slightly problematic, the file is easily read. If, for whatever reason, you need to completely eliminate any intelligence on your objects, there is an AEC export to AutoCAD, which will basically reduce all of these intelligent objects down to simple AutoCAD lines and blocks. So there's no problem in having your file go back and forth between AutoCAD and AutoCAD Architecture. Now, layer management is one of those big issues in AutoCAD that, you've got so many layers to deal with. How do I get things on the correct layer? Well, let's get over to AutoCAD Architecture here and talk a little bit about layer management. So you'll notice that as I select an element, you'll see it's on the A-wall layer up here. You can see that if I pick a door, it's going to be on the A-door layer. If I start to place, you'll notice I'm on layer 0 right now. I'm going to show you what happens. I'll just go ahead and delete this door here, and we'll notice how the wall heals. But if I'll pick this door and I'll add one of these selected, notice that the layers switched over to A-door. And then when I'm done with that particular door, I'm just going to move this guy down a little bit. When I'm done with that particular door, you'll see that that ended up on the A-door layer, but I'm still on layer 0. So how does that happen? Well, there is something called layer key styles, which are stored in every file, and you would put these in your template file, and the layer key style allows you to control the layer that things get placed on. So for example, you'll notice the door layer here is going on the layer A-door, and the color is 31. So if that layer didn't already exist in your file, it will be created and the door will be placed on that layer. You can even add your own custom layer keys. So if you have objects that AutoCAD Architecture didn't anticipate, you can control the layers for that. So let's close that down. Okay, so automatic layer management is a pretty good thing. Smart objects. I think I already showed that, but there are lots and lots of smart objects in the software. So for example, up here on the upper left, I've got walls and doors and windows and roof slabs and stairs. And if I expand my tool palette, you'll see that we have all of those things listed here, plus additional palettes with these different styles in them. And what makes these intelligent versus dynamic blocks or other sorts of things in AutoCAD is, again, if I were to select something like this door and chose to choose Add Selected, notice as I place it in the wall, it will go ahead and automatically break the wall. It also has flips on it and things of that sort, but it's more than dynamic blocks. It's also three-dimensional. So you have, this easy ability to place things on the correct layers and at the correct sizes, and not have to actually worry about whether or not your door changes size and your walls clean up. So let's get back over here. Walls and doors clean up. Yep, so we saw that. And the next thing is easily change objects. So for example, if you decided that, hey, this single door really needs to be a double door, assuming that we have a double door in the file already, and I think I've got one in here, we've got this hinged double door. Now, the door size at the moment is 3 feet, so just changing the style doesn't change the size, but it's pretty easy to go back and in this list of sizes find one that is closer to the size that you need. See if I can get this to scroll up a little bit, 6070, and now I would have that door easily replaced. So pretty easy to swap styles. The same thing would apply with walls and any other smart object in your file. Let's see what we got. So, more styles than you can shake a stick at. Just for your edification, the possible or derivation of the phrase shake a stick at comes from shepherds, right? So shepherds have these staffs or sticks, and they have sheep, and they've got to keep count on them. So they take the stick and they start shaking it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And they end up with more sheep than they can actually count. So more than they can shake a stick at. Well, let's see about our sheep in AutoCAD Architecture here. If I needed a wall, right, I've got a bunch of wall styles in here at the moment, but what if I need something that's not there? Well, at the bottom here, I have this item called More Wall Tools, and you'll see this at the bottom of doors and at windows and everything else that's in these tool palettes. And when we click on that, it'll bring up a program called Content Browser. Now, Content Browser has tons of content, but it's going to bring it up contextually. So in this case, we are at walls, and there are brick walls, CMU, stud, casework. If I go to stud walls, there are 9 pages of stud walls that I can choose from. And if I find one that I like, I'm not sure what this guy is here, but here's one that I like. I say, okay, I want that in my file. I can simply hold down my left button on the eyedropper, drag that, drop that in my drawing, and now I'm ready to start placing that. So I could pick a spot, let's say on this wall, come in and start drawing this other wall here, and you'll notice that it immediately is cleaning up with that wall style. So lots and lots of styles, and yes, you can shake your stick all day if you like. Okay, let me move this back out of the way, and we'll move on to our next item. Display management. So sometimes you need a level of detail, maybe at 1/8 inch drawings, then at 1/4 inch you want a little more detail. Maybe you're doing a presentation drawing and you'd like your walls filled in, or maybe you're doing a ceiling and you don't want to see plumbing fixtures or door openings. So again, that's a lot of work in AutoCAD. So let's take a look at how that works over here in AutoCAD Architecture. Down here at the bottom of the screen is your display management, and we have display styles here, and we're currently in what's called medium detail. I'm going to switch to high detail. Now watch the hatching in the wall and watch the wall layers themselves as I switch from medium to high detail. So the hatching got denser because it's designed for different scale. And you'll also notice that we're starting to see the inner layers of our walls, the studs and the chipboard layers. We could switch down here at the bottom to presentation, and you'll see now that we have our walls filled in. And finally, if we want to do a reflected ceiling drawing, we probably don't want to see the plumbing or the doors, so we have a display representation called reflected. And now we only see the walls and the door openings are closed, and the stairs go away, as do the plumbing fixtures. So very, very easy to control those displays. Ceiling grids. So ceiling grids, when you have to do a ceiling grid in AutoCAD, if it's not uniform, you have to actually create two separate grids. In Revit, you don't actually have to do that, and again, it's object-based. So let me show you a ceiling grid here. I think I have the layer turned off that I have my grid lines on. So let me just see if I can find that layer, and it should be my ceiling layer. Let's go okay, there it is, ceiling grid. Okay, so I created ahead of time because ceiling grids like to have a boundary. I kind of cheated a little bit and created this polyline using the boundary command. And I'll go ahead over here and just go ahead and pick ceiling grid and place that. Now, in the properties palette, you could start to resize your grid. Currently, it's 20 by 20, or you can drag and drop it and then adjust the size. You can also adjust your x-axis and y-axis. So let me go ahead and just place this in here. Okay, and I'll go ahead and pick an angle and then just press the escape key. What I'll do is I'll just grab the grip points on this and just drag this out to a little bit bigger than my boundary. And then I'll go ahead and, with it selected in the properties palette, I'll go ahead and say for boundary, I'm going to use select an object, and I will come in and I will select the polyline. And you'll see that we are instantly clipped to the polyline. And again, if you decide to change, let's say you want be 4 feet in the x-axis, I can simply come in here and make that 4 feet, and it would adjust. So you get intelligent, easy to use ceiling grids that are highly responsive, again, to display representations as well. Okay, next topic is property and data sets. So let me go back to, actually I'm going to switch over to, we'll stay in here. Let me go ahead and we'll switch back to our medium detail. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Let me pull this guy over here. So you'll notice that the properties palette is a little bit different in AutoCAD. If I came over to AutoCAD, you'll notice the properties palette is just that. But in AutoCAD Architecture, the properties palette has 3 tabs: design, display, and extended data. So we are able to add to our objects data, property sets, and data formats. And on the extended data tab, we can see these different property sets. So at the moment, we have some property sets that are style-based. Those are added when you actually edit the style. Over here on the first tab, General, we have something called Property Sets. So as you place the door, you have this information. As you tag your doors, you can add what are called object-based property sets. And property sets are going to be used later on in generating schedules. And you can create property sets really sort of any way you want to. I'll show you very quickly where those are on the Manage tab and under Display Manager. We would have there's going to be, documentation objects, and we have property set definition. So for door objects, we have all of these items here, and any of these items can be used for scheduling, so as well as tagging the doors and other kinds of things. Okay, so really some cool stuff there going on. Multi-view blocks. So you'll notice that we had, as we switched from one view to another, you'll notice these toilets or sinks or things of that sort. If I look at the properties for them, it says it's a multi-view block. If we look at a multi-view block's definition, we'll see that there are view blocks or regular AutoCAD blocks that are assigned to different view directions. And you'll notice that we have these display representations that match that list at the bottom of the screen. So when I get to reflected, you'll see there are no view blocks, so those vanish off the screen. Well, what if you want to create your own? There's no problem there. I'm going to go over to the next drawing. And what I did was I found online this three-dimensional image of Gerrit Rietveld's red, yellow, blue chair, I believe. And using some of the tools in AutoCAD Architecture, I created these 4 other blocks for different view directions, and I turned them into a multi-view block. So on the Insert tab at the top, we have multi-view block, and there is my chair. I'm going to try to place it out of the way over here, and then press Escape. And if we look at the properties for this particular chair, you'll see that we've got plan and model and right and front and left blocks for different view directions. So what will happen is when I switch, let's say, to a front view, I get a 2-dimensional image of that particular chair. Or if I look at it from the side, I'll get that. If I look at it from this other side, if I look at it from the back, if I look at it from, let me go to a plan view, and I'm going to flip myself around here a little bit. Let's go one more time and one more time, right? So we see it in plan, and when I go to a 3D view, I would get the 3D chair, right? So you can make these blocks fairly easily, even if there's only a 3D block available. You can do that pretty easily inside of AutoCAD Architecture. And again, if there was no display available for reflected, oh, let me get to a top view here. Actually, let's do it. It's usually better to come over here. Let's do top over here. There we go. So if there was no, if I look at this and there's no chair available under reflected, which there isn't, when I switch to a reflected display, the chair goes away. So I created this myself with, you know, some of the tools that come with the software, but it really isn't that complicated if you know how to create blocks. Okay, so multi-view blocks that you can create yourself. Detail components. So let's say I don't need these intelligent objects. I don't need these walls and doors that clean up, or I don't even know what these multi-view blocks and all this other stuff. But I do detailing, right? I do door jamb head details. I do wall sections and things of that sort. AutoCAD Architecture comes with a wealth of 2-dimensional objects that are stored in the Detail Component Manager. So let me show you how that sort of kind of works. I'm not going to actually take you through the whole process, but let's go back to this guy here. Okay, so let me close this. And we've got another drawing open here. So these are essentially 2D blocks. Now, again, if I bring the Properties palette over and select one of these, you're going to see it says a block reference. And it's just, that's what it is. But if I come down to extended entity data, we'll see that it's actually a detail component, which is called 3-core CMU. So how do we get these into our files? Excuse me. If I go back to the Home tab, way over here on the right of the ribbon, we have the Detail Component Manager. Now, there's other ways to get to it, but that's pretty easy. And that will bring up a dialog box, and these are sorted in basically the CSI format. So you can go through any of these divisions and find things. Like if I wanted finishes and I wanted to place some gypsum board, I'd have gypsum wallboard accessories or gypsum wallboard. If I want to place some masonry, right, again, I've got bricks, and I have all of my different sizes down here. So let's say I'd like to place some standard 3/8 joint bricks. I can select that and pick Insert the Component. In the Properties palette, I will have options for whether I'm placing it in section, or am I looking down on it in plan or in elevation. And so I'm going to place it in section for the moment. And as I place this, I can simply drag, and it will place this whole column of bricks. Now again, when I'm done, these are simple blocks that have editing capabilities. Now, if you needed to swap something, notice that there's a bond beam here. If I need to swap one of these out, I can simply select it and right-click. There are all kinds of editing tools that are available for this, AEC modification tools, but there's also this item called Replace Selected. So now I can replace that, and again, if I go to the Properties palette, I will switch from the 3-core CMU to, let's say, bond beams, and it's thinking. And with bond beams, I can then choose a size, let's say single 8x8, and now I have my bond beam, and I simply place it and press Escape. So if you can draw in AutoCAD faster than that, you don't need this product. But if you can't, you need this product. In addition, you can add what's called keynotes, and there is keynoting so that you can standardize what your annotation looks like in your files. Okay. Let's move on. AutoCAD Architecture and BIM. So again, as I said, if you're staying in the AutoCAD world for the next few years, but you'd like to be able to take advantage of intelligence in your drawings, we can do that with AutoCAD Architecture. So AutoCAD Architecture's intelligence is managed by something called the Project Browser and Project Navigator. The idea behind Project Browser and Project Navigator is that instead of having a loose collection of files, you basically create a project in which you state what your parameters for your building are. So let me switch back over into AutoCAD. I'm going to close this drawing. And I have a file open that's part of a project. So I'm going to show you where we started with that. This is Project Browser. In Project Browser, you can create new projects and manage them from here. You also have the ability to add all kinds of properties to that. Some of these can actually be used for creating new files. Some of these are used for creating tool palettes. Some of them are used in filling out title blocks, for example. Okay. You then would have something called Project Navigator, and Project Navigator has 4 tabs: Projects, Constructs, Views, and Sheets. So I think I've got, let me come back over to here, right, these 4 guys. So it is basically Sheet Set Manager. The last tab over here on the right, and I'll go back into the drawing in a minute, is essentially Sheet Set Manager. But then we've added these 3 other tabs: Views, Constructs, and Project. So back into AutoCAD, back into AutoCAD Architecture. For Project, you basically will go through and establish levels in your building. As you create new drawings, you associate those drawings with certain levels. So for properties, I've associated the ground floor plan with the ground floor level. If I came to the second floor and look at its properties, I've associated that with the second floor. Okay, so we'll see where that comes back in a minute, but this is all managed here. Constructs and elements, we don't have time to go through the concepts of these, but these are kind of your underlying drawings. This is the walls, doors, and windows, and grids. Then we have view files. View files are where you create what you want to plot. So this is where you put your annotation and your tags and everything else, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then you create your sheets, which is where you plot. So views are what you plot, and sheets are where you plot them. Okay? So back over here to drag and drop Xreffing. Okay, so when you are doing external references in AutoCAD, it's kind of like, oh, geez, how do I do this? I need to you know, find the file. Then I've got to figure out what layer to put it on. Then I've got to decide if it's an attach or overlay. And you don't have to do that anymore with AutoCAD Architecture. Depending on whether you're using a construct or an element, Revit will go ahead and figure out whether it should be attached or overlaid. So, for example, in this file, if I looked at my external references at this point, I would see that my column grid is in the file already, and it's attached. But if I look at the exterior, it's set as overlay, okay? If I look at the layer that this is on, if I hover over the column grid, it's on a grid layer. And if I look at the model object, it will be, it's still got the column grid. Let's see if I can find a model. That's still on the column grid layer, so I'm getting the column grid as well. Let's see if I can get this guy here, right? So that's going on to its own layer, and right now it's on layer 0. So let me go ahead and drag and drop into here the let's go back over to constructs, and now I decide I really need the core in the building. Now I actually have this set up so it works fine, but when you're actually creating your drawings, when you Xref, you use 0, 0. But to get this in, I just hold down my left button, just drag and let go. And it's now Xref'd into the file. Now if I pick this, right, this external reference, and look, it's also gone currently on layer 0. That must be where I have it set for placement, but again, you can change that. And again, if we go into the Xref manager, it says for the core, it decided that that would be attached. So we don't even have to worry about methods for placing them, because AutoCAD Architecture will manage that for us depending on what file type it is. Okay. So pretty easy to do Xrefing. I'll show you another way to do that in a little bit. Easy view and sheet creation, okay? So easy view and sheet creation at the moment, let me go over to, I want to go over to the building model. I'm going to say no to this. And let me go back to the building model. And let's say I've got my door schedule. I'm going to just move that down a little bit. Okay, so let's say I would like to create a view of this that gets placed onto a sheet. Well, on my views, this is the building model, so there are some views in here already, but I can right-click on that and say to create a new model space view, and I could call it a door schedule. And I could say it's 1/4 inch, and I could say, okay, I'm going to add a new view window, and I'll pick a spot here and drag that, and I'll go ahead and pick OK. So now I have this new model space view called door schedule, okay? And let me save this. And if I come back over to sheets and go under architectural, I'm going to go over see if I've got any schedules. I don't at the moment, so I'm going to right-click and say I want to create a new sheet. So I'll say I want to create a new sheet, and we'll call this one, I'm not quite sure, how about A-601, and we'll call this one door schedule. Let's call it schedules. And I'm going to tell it to open it in the editor. Right, so now there's my sheet. All I have to do is come back over to views and come over to my door schedule, hold down the left button, drag and drop that into my drawing, and now I've placed that. It is now on my sheet. This is a viewport. This is Xref'd into model space. So that was Xref'd into model space. The entire drawing is obviously Xref'd in, but it's clipped ahead of time to just that particular view. So really, really very easy to create model space views and drag and drop those onto sheets. Okay, let me close this. Say no to saving that. Okay, so let's go back over here. Automated dimensions, okay? So dimensioning is not always tons of fun in AutoCAD, and when you do a string of dimensions, they're always sort of independent, even when you use the continue command. Well, AutoCAD Architecture has automated dimensioning, so let me show you how that works. I'm going to switch back over to here. So you'll notice that my exterior of my building is actually an external reference file, right? So, you know, there's doors and windows and other kinds of openings in there, but it's an external reference file. Well, AutoCAD Architecture doesn't care about that. It's sort of like the honey badger, right? It doesn't care. It's just going to find those objects and go ahead and put a dimension in. So on the Annotate tab at the top, under the dimensioning, I have one here that I've created called the AEC Dimension Exterior Rough Openings. I can go ahead and pick that wall through the Xref, right-click, and drag out and put my string of dimensions in. And it goes ahead and reads the dimensions and dimensions the different objects. Now these are all one string. So they are editable after the fact. There are little controls here at the bottom that will allow you to add additional points if you want. You can flip the, you can move the chains around, you can flip the dimensions, you can also get in and edit in place individual items. So you can remove with the minus some of the witness extension lines and dimension lines, so you can add additional ones. So really, really easy to add dimensions after the fact. Okay. Tagging through Xrefs. So you have the ability to add tags to your files through an Xref. Now that's pretty spectacular. So this file here, we have the core as an Xref, and we would have the exterior building as an Xref, and we have the first floor and the second floor as Xrefs. So these are all referenced into here. And yet we're able to add tags, and the tags add data to these objects. So we can actually place a tag on an object, and it would go ahead and add extended data to that we can schedule. So if we were to look at our door tag on Annotate, there are door tags. If you're not using Project Browser and Project Navigator, that's fine. We just have regular door tags. But if you are, you can tag through and add data to these different doors. So for example, even though this door is in an Xref, if I select that and right-click, I have an option called Edit Referenced Property Set Data. So if I go ahead and now click on that door, notice it just selected that door. And when I right-click, it pops up my property set data box, and it says Property Sets Door Object. And I have the specific information now about that door, door number 10, at which point I could change the information here. If I change it here, not only will the tag change and the door schedule update, but it will also propagate itself back down onto that individual Xref, so that it will be up to date anywhere else that you might be tagging it or reading data off of it. And again, those property sets are added over here. Let me minimize the Project Navigator, and I'm going to right-click on the edge of my Properties palette and go over to Documents. And when I go over to Tags, here's my door tag, project-based, and if I go over to the properties for that, we'll see that there is a property set definition and a tag that's getting added to that door. So when we tag the door, we're actually doing more than placing a tag, but we're also adding data to that door. So there's a lot of intelligence underlying a lot of the features in this product. Okay, so where are we heading next? We are heading towards the last item. We can tag through Xrefs. The last thing is to talk about schedules. So door schedules and room schedules and finish schedules and other kinds of schedules. Normally we just do those with attributed blocks. So there's nothing really related to the objects in our file. In many cases, people can try to use a table and link that to an Excel file and somehow tie data in your file, export that to an Excel file, and then bring that back in and tie that into your schedule. But honestly, it's complicated. There's add-on software that does that, but you don't really have to even worry about that anymore when you're using AutoCAD Architecture. So let me show you schedules. Okay, so I'm going to recreate this schedule from scratch. I'm going to leave that guy over here for now, and yeah, that guy's over there is good. Okay, so let's talk about this particular file. The file that we're in is the called the model file. Now, there's a lot of other things in here I'm going to point out before the schedule. So if I come back over to Views and I look at my building model, and if I right-click on that and look at Properties, if I go over to Content, because this, you have the ability to say, as you're creating a view file, what levels in the building do you want to pull in? And I said, let's pull in all of the levels of the building. We're going to pull in the roof, the second floor, the ground floor, and the foundation. Then it looks at all of our constructs that we created, and the constructs were associated with various and sundry levels. So you can choose which constructs you want to pull in, right? So the idea is, I don't want to Xref as an attachment the exterior to the ground floor, because it's going to get pulled in here. Notice that it doesn't list the elements, so that's why the core and the column grid had to be attached versus overlaid, right? So that's all being managed for you. But anyway, we're pulling all the levels in. By pulling all the levels in and having them set at the correct heights, let me go to an isometric view of this. Southwest isometric view, right? By pulling in all the levels at all the right heights. And how did it do that? Well, by telling it in Project Navigator what height the roof should be at, or what height the second floor should be at, or what height the ground floor should be at. When I bring them in, it's automatically placed at the right Z coordinate. So I don't have to worry about moving them up or down. If I do that and I work fairly accurately, I can just put these elevation symbols or section marks in my file, and I can have them automatically generate these two-dimensional elevations that if I make changes to the model, when the Xref gets updated, we can update these elevations, and of course these are already Xref'd onto sheet files. So how can we also use this to create schedules? It looks like I deleted my door schedule, so let's recreate it. So creating a schedule, I can come over to the Annotate tab at the top, and I'm going to do a door schedule that's project-based. So it's going to ask me to select my objects. I'll window my Xrefs, right-click, and I'll go ahead and place my door schedule and press Enter. Now I can see how impressed you are with this empty schedule, right? So let's take a look at what's going on with this. Again, let me open up the Properties palette and see what we've got set. Well, Update Automatically is turned off, so we'll turn that on. Add New Objects Automatically, we'll turn that on. Scan Xrefs, we'll turn that on. Scan Blocks, we'll turn that on. So we're going to go ahead now and reselect our objects. So I'll right-click, and I'll go over to Selection, Add, and I'll go ahead and reselect. And we get lots of stuff. It's like, whoa, I got all these question marks and all this weird stuff going on. Well, the reason we do is that we've added all of this data to doors, but some of them might be for toilet partitions, or some of them really might not be getting scheduled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter my list here and say that all I really want to do is find anything that is on a door layer. So asterisk, door, asterisk, and when I do that, I get my schedule nicely filtered, right? So there's my schedule, and nicely filtered, and I can go through and take a look at the numbering, and if I see any duplicates, I can go through and resolve where those are occurring. So how do we actually generate this schedule? Again, if we take a look at it, if I select it and at the top of the screen go up to Edit Style, we can see that here is our property set listed, and then our property. So those property sets that got attached to the objects by tagging them, we can now use for the door number or the room number or a suffix. For the style-based information, perhaps size, excuse me, or heights, we have things like door styles for the louver width or the louver height, and we have frame styles. And so you have the ability to add and remove these columns. You can also do sorting, and you can adjust layouts. So there's all kinds of things you can do with schedules. The same thing applies up here at the top with your room schedules, okay? And again, if you have been very clever and you've created your sections and other kinds of views, it's pretty easy at that point to create your sheets. And this is basically now Sheet Set Manager, maybe on steroids, but again, if we go to open one of these files, it's essentially using Sheet Set Manager, and we have those fields in there that are pulling in information such as the sheet number and the sheet name from inside of basically Project Navigator and the Sheet tab. Okay. With that, I think I have gotten through the 20 major reasons why you really should be thinking about AutoCAD architecture.